for
It says
certain
live.
things. You are live. Yay. Okay. It worked. Yay. I love it because people are probably laughing at me like every time that I pop on live because I'm always like, like,
Same.
is it
I'm like, how
there? Is
many
it?
webinars have I done? And every time I'm like, just bear with me a minute. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God my, audience or guests or, participants, students, whatever you want to call them, whatever I'm doing, that they're patient with my lack of technological skills. So
Yeah, seriously. Well, that's the idea, right? Is that listen, we're in a whole new world. I don't care if it's over a year into this whole experience. It doesn't matter. We're, every day is different, every day is new, and we're all just trying to figure this out. And we have all these new tools. Like, even we were just saying this is StreamYard is what we're
mhm.
going live in right now. And I have OneStream Live, we have Zoom, there's another system I'm dabbling with now. And it's like, and they all look different. So it's like cut yourself a break and just like, hey, I'm here. At least I made it.
Seriously, the marketing company that I'm working with now, they have a whole set of their own, I don't even know really what it's called, but it's like different apps that do all these different things. And
Right.
they were like, we want to schedule this onboarding meeting so that we can take you through. I said, no, I'm never going to use it. I'm just telling you right now. That's why I'm telling you.
Like it's too much.
It's too much. Yeah. I'm like, that's fabulous that you have all these capabilities, but I'm not going to use it. So don't even waste your time. So
yeah, I agree. It's too much for my brain. I'm starting to get, I'm trying to get into Clubhouse, the app Clubhouse, which I've been, messaging you about. And, like, I'm getting into it, but at the same time, it's like, wow, so many things to like, like it's, it's a completely different platform. It's not like Facebook or Instagram. It's audio. Like there was etiquette to get used to, legit like etiquette when you're like in the room. Like
okay.
some people say, okay, I'm done speaking now. Like so
Yes.
that people
Yes.
know. And I'm like, so I just laugh at myself and I just giggle. I'm done speaking now.
I went on for the first time, our friend Suzanne.
Yeah.
So I went on for the first time and I happened to see that she had a room open. I didn't even know, or whatever it is. And I popped in and I heard everybody saying that. So I was like, well, I should say hello. And I did. And I'm like, what do I say now? I don't know. I'll get
Exactly.
into it. Maybe
You're like,
we'll
what's happening? It's okay. We're in a whole new world. And people have been mostly forgiving with that. And I know anybody who's watching right now will be 100% forgiving of us being, slightly delayed in having our chit chat because it's good because we're giving people a couple minutes to, to get it together, to hop on, to join us. And I actually went in and tagged you on Facebook in the live so that it's on your page too, ideally now, if all goes well.
Okay.
So oh my God, thank you for being here. Like, I love you. You don't understand. So I have to explain. First, I'll just quickly introduce myself because I forget to do that, like pretty much on every episode. So hi, if you're this is, the first, second, third time, whatever you're watching this and you've not actually known about me, I'm Samantha Long. I'm the host of the show. Self-care is my job. And I am a yoga instructor, a life coach, and a self-care mentor for women. So this show is all about self-care, obviously. And I am so happy to have Lisa back with us today. So this is the second time that I get to have you here. And it looks like if all goes well, we can have you back again. I would love to have this be a thing for us. And just like real quick, as far as like how we know each other, like it's just so amazing because what was coming to my brain as I was like, getting ready to pop on and stuff was like the value of coaching. So like the value of coaching goes beyond working just one-on-one with a coach, especially if you're like in a group coaching, because I met Lisa through a coaching program, a group coaching program. And so it was just in my head, it's like, God, like, it's just another reason why these types of programs like allow you to network with people who are in your space and are in like your mode of life and are trying to make the same things happen. So you're gonna be exposed to people. They talk about your tribe. Well, Lisa's now a part of my tribe and I could not be happier. And we have been like literally communicating via like video messages on WhatsApp through this entire year. And I'm just so grateful because it's just even having that like quick back and forth of like, this is what I'm working on, or this is what's driving me effing crazy right now. Whatever it is, like it's so important to have that. So I'm just so happy to have you as a friend.
Thank you.
And to have you on the show as well. So Lisa is a psychotherapist. She's an empowerment and leadership coach, which is really super exciting. And she's a mother. Yay. Like, of course, because welcome to the month of moms on Self-Care is My Job.
I totally forgot it was Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, well, hopefully, you actually can relax. I have spent the majority of the day so far cleaning, which I am couching for myself as a form of self-care today so that it can get done, because it's all about the mindset. And I'm like, so that I can enjoy my Mother's Day tomorrow and I could sit actually, and actually enjoy a somewhat clean house and enjoy that that my husband's going to cook for me and do this and not be looking around like, oh, I got to go do this. I got to go do that, because that's what happens. Oh my God. So Lisa, tell us what you've been up to. Tell us a little bit about your, business right now, your offering, just so we get to know you a little bit since the last time you've been here. And then we'll talk a little bit about our topic of today.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad you brought up the piece about coaching too, because I've been actually reflecting a lot on the beginning of our journey and how it sort of like evolved over time. But there's like, I'm finding now that I appreciate that experience more so than I did when it concluded, or maybe even like more so than when I was actually in it. Because, there's so much to do and there's like, you're trying to implement new skills and acquire new skills and all this and that. But I feel like now I'm able to glean, just different little nuggets of information, including like, a couple of solid friendships that have come out of the experience, which are, is really fantastic. And, I love that, you and I feel like anyway, just gelled right away. And I could just be my whole rotten self if I wanted to. And, just completely transparent and not feel like weird about it at all. So, thank you so much. And I love joining you anytime. So my business definitely has transformed even over the last year, not just because of COVID, just in general. Like, I think I needed to probably at the start of COVID was when I went back into private practice. I had been in private practice probably about a decade ago. But, after I had my son, I didn't want to be working evenings and I just needed to cut back. So providing mental health services in a school system seemed to be like the way to go. You get the school hours and everything, but I knew that I would always be going back into private practice. And that's where I was at the start of COVID, except had to revamp that, going from brick and mortar to virtual. All of the fears and concerns I had about making that transfer really didn't pan out. Like, it just, again, comes back to mindset, right? Like, I kind of was like, well, we're all in this together. We'll figure it out. And it's actually worked out pretty nicely. So I still offer, one-to-one psychotherapy. My area that I love, I have such a passion for, is trauma, really helping people work through that developmental and just attachment issues related to early childhood trauma and developmental trauma. So that's really like my love and passion. And I've been taking courses on more expressive art and using art to really help facilitate that healing process. So that's like the new sort of direction of my love of working with people and trauma. And I'm going to take the word about trauma informed to maybe some businesses and higher ed, because I am really hoping, I know that so many people are feeling like, well, we want to go back to the way things were, pre-COVID. And I'm like, no, I don't, because a lot of people were suffering to begin with. And COVID just like highlighted things that people were already struggling with and then exacerbated them. Right. So I feel like we have an opportunity, to make some significant changes, whether it be school systems, businesses, corporations. So I just want to get in there and like start educating people on mental health and some of these other issues, because it's so important, especially now.
Seriously. And you mentioned your transition into the corporate area.
Mhm.
And that's been on my mind a lot too. Same thing. The fact that so many businesses sort of transition to mostly remote, if not fully remote, and are still, remote. And it's like an example, I think about, for example, my husband's business, right? Like my husband's job. And it's just like he started remote. Like he like literally started that job that week pretty much, that
Mhm.
everything went remote. Like, so
Yeah.
he's never been in person there. Um, and things are going swimmingly, like he's doing so well, like it took a little bit for him to get connected with people and stuff, but it's just an example of like, that flexibility that I think is so important for the mental health of your employees when you're
Mhm.
either a supervisor or you're a CEO or you have a business and you can, you can really take on, be in charge of allowing them that space and flexibility that people need in life, and shit still gets done. It
Right.
still gets done. It doesn't,
Yeah.
so it's like this it was just always this very old school mentality of like being in
Oh,
face-to-face
yeah.
meetings, and it's a very like patriarchal like approach to things, and it's hard to let go of it. I get it. It's change is hard, but I think about my own personal experience too, because as a
Mhm.
mother, when I first became a mother, before I even gave birth to my daughter, I was laid off when I was 8 months pregnant. And, so it was obvious, and it was very obvious to me, by the way, that like, I was kind of pushed out because I was about to go on maternity leave, and I was kind of
Oh boy.
early on in my career at that company. But
Mhm.
in addition to that, it doesn't even matter, because I look back now and I can see that the life that I wanted as a working mother
Right.
would not have panned out, would not have worked out, because of the lack of flexibility, because of the lack of understanding,
Mhm.
and the lack of importance put on people's mental health, the lack of focus. And so yeah, I think that, yeah, I hope that this whole experience has, that's my hope too, that it's been an eye opener in that area too for people, because
Yes.
we need to make space for this stuff. And it's a
Mhm.
really good segue actually into our conversation, because I mean, we're probably going to talk about a handful of things, I'm sure, if not a whole bag of things. But but
Knowing
so
us.
balance, right? And that's and it is hand in hand with what we were just discussing, because it's like, yeah, the balance of your health and
Mhm.
your responsibilities. So or your wellness, I like to say, really, and your responsibilities, because I like to
Mhm.
say wellness because I feel like it embodies a little bit more of a like contentment aspect, and not
Mhm.
just about health, not just about your physical or medical health, right?
Right,
Or even
right,
even not even just about your mental health. Like, what about your
right.
emotional health and your spiritual wellness and all of that, and your ability to have a life, like kind of stuff. So that balance we can talk about as far as work life balance, right? But it's so much more to than that. And since we're talking about motherhood this month, you add in that piece, so you already have that conflict of, working and having a life, and your mental health and your responsibilities and the expectations of society and your job and other people and all of this, and your emotional wellness, and having that balance. And then you add in kids.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay.
Nobody ever told me all
So
this.
I
Yeah,
just simply
no,
don't think that it's discussed enough how complicated that shit is. I mean,
right. Yes. Yeah, we don't even like you talk about creating the space. I'm still like messing with my position here. We don't even create the space to have these conversations. Just like, oh, well, it's understood that that's a conversation for maybe home or with your personal life, but don't bring that stuff to work. I was listening to on the way in. I don't know. I think it was on a podcast. I listen to so many different podcasts that I'm not even entirely sure, but they were talking about. How women make up such a large percentage of employees in the United States. And that's why women are, disproportionately impacted as
mhm,
opposed to men post COVID with getting back into the workforce. The host started talking about how businesses business owners and, just different corporations and things were sort of complaining that they have all of these positions available and no one to fill them. And so somebody jumped in, don't remember the hosts or the people involved, but they were saying how that a big possibility for that is that women being the primary caretakers for their own children, possibly other family members, sickly parents or, extended family, because they have all of these additional responsibilities, or they tend to shoulder more of that burden, housekeeping, all of those things, they're not able to step back into the workforce, at least not the way it was. And a lot of businesses and corporations are still looking to go back to business as usual. They're, sort of like throwing a few things out there that are centered around, taking care of their employees' wellness, but it's not sufficient. It's not enough to help women get back into the workforce. So something's got to give, people. I don't know what it is. Well, I think I know what it is, but
you probably do.
Really listening. Yeah, it's like.
I mean, it's the issue is that it's a lot. And like you said, okay, incorporating a wellness program, right? Or whatever it might be. It's not enough. There needs to be a full-on shift in the way that we do things. And yeah, you're right. Do I have a detailed, agenda, planned out as to what exactly? No. But hey, if somebody wants to pay me to do it, I'll do it.
I'm sure we can put our heads, together. And
I'll do it. Because I've lived it, and I can, and it's exactly what you were saying. There's not even a forum for discussion about these things with the people who are actually living it. So my only hope, is that there are, CEOs and managers out there who are really starting to see this picture and starting to reach out for help. For example, I did a talk with the town of Newton. I did a self-care talk for the town of Newton.
That's right. Yes.
And it was just it was so nice to speak to the town manager of Newton. It was so great to experience a guy who was prioritizing the mental wellness and development of his employees. And that's his whole thing.
Hallelujah.
Right. So I was like, wow, yeah. But yeah, so support is the name of the game here. And we were just talking about that before we hopped on, because when you see people living this perfectly in balance life, when you see mothers, working moms, stay-at-home moms, doesn't matter, because either way you're a working mom, by the way, doesn't matter. There's literally no difference. It's equally difficult on either side. But when you see this, perfection, and then you feel the need to find this perfect balance of, my house is clean, I got my work done, I got my self-care in, my kids are not only fed and clothed but entertained and jumping for joy and all of that. It is not, first of all, it's pretty much impossible to have that all happening at the same time. So I like to say balancing, because I feel like we're always balancing, but that grasping of that balance is so momentary. It's so fleeting, because once, just like anything else, something's going to come in and throw you right off, and that's fine. It's about I think it's also about accepting that, just accepting that. But when you do see that, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, when you do see that balance being maintained, the support is there to make that happen. Whether that is childcare, whether that is, hired help, or I don't even know if I'm supposed to use that phrase anymore, but you know what I'm talking about. My cleaning ladies that I was happy to have pre-COVID. For example, so you hire people to support you. That's what that it's perfect. That's what we should be able to do. We should be able to all come as a community together. I think also you hear a lot about the village, right? For motherhood, right? There used to be this concept of you having a village and having, Susie down the street that you can call on whenever you need to, so they can pop over for 2 hours while you go to a doctor's appointment and go get your nails done. And it's it doesn't happen anymore. That sense of community has dissipated. and my only hope is that this pandemic situation hasn't, I feel like in some ways it has brought us together because we're collectively dealing with a lot of the same shit.
Mm-hmm.
But, unfortunately, the social distancing aspect of it might very well have created a divide also, where you're like, and forget the political end of things, of where we're, now having to check people's check people's social before we decide whether we're going to, like, be friends or whatever. But yeah, so the support needs to be there, and that is, like we were just saying, it's so many pieces. There's so
Yeah.
many pieces to that. It's crazy.
When we first started talking about doing this, and then you had left me a message about, some specific like talking points or kind of like the tone of, this forum and everything. And I was like, I actually, I've steered away from using the word balance, because what I've found in talking with people, whether they have young children out of, the home, all of that, working moms, non-working moms for one reason or another, or they're not moms, is just balance in a lot of people's minds is 50-50.
Yeah.
Whether they're talking about balancing the household responsibilities with their spouse, or they're talking about, having some balance of me time versus taking care of responsibilities. So I've been encouraging people I work with, let's just throw the word out, because if that's how you conceptualize your life around this word, let's just get rid of it. And I heard a different word being used that I was like, that's the one, and it's integrated. I think that, as you said, different things are going to come our way. It's going to throw us off balance. It's going to invite other types of stressors. So let's figure out what's the best way to maintain some, homeostasis, right? Let's keep this all in check, mind, body, and integrate whatever else is going on. Like, it should be more like this versus like the justice scales, which is kind of how I felt a lot of the people were thinking about the word balance. So now I'm like, no more balance. We're going for integration. And it's a word that it definitely resonates with me. And it takes the pressure off, because you're not going to have it all in a pretty little package at any given time. Like, I think most of us, if we get real, we've sort of, the pendulum has swung too far to the other side between, like, if we go way, 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 way back, post-industrial, revolution, and women getting into the workforce, and, equal rights and everything. And now we've swung all the way in the other direction, which is still, in many respects, very patriarchal and, controlling, and it really doesn't meet the needs of just us collectively as a society, a culture, everything, by saying you have to do it all, have it all, be super smart, super gorgeous, blah, blah. It's like, no wonder why we're constantly anxious and perfectionistic and everything, because you don't even know which way to turn half the time. So integrated, just have it integrated to whatever works for you is kind of like my new motto.
I love that. In fact, I'm probably now going to change the title of this video when I upload it. And I'm like, got it. Wonderful. It's perfect, because I'm glad you're sharing that, because like I said, I have been saying this forever, that that actual grasping of balance is so it's really unrealistic, because it's like here today, gone tomorrow. And it's so important to just, like, we're here vocalizing this, like having this discussion for the people who are thinking to this themselves, oh my God, like, how often do you hear a woman say that they're a hot mess? I'm a hot mess. And it's like, guess what, baby? We all are. Like, that's it. Like, it's okay. The imperfect is fine, especially given what we're up against. And that's exactly what you were just saying. The fact that it's, the pendulum is swung the other way. I always say this, that it's like, you go from way back in history, women's history, you come to now, where it's like, you can have it all. You can do it all now, baby. Like, you can have a career, you can have your kids, you can do, no. Well, now, like you said, it's swung so far, but the support to do so
Mm-hmm.
And the communication needed as a collective never happened of like, okay, so now we just have more responsibilities. And, I hate to sound like a whiner over here, but hey, somebody's got to be the squeaky wheel where it's like, we're fucking drowning, dude. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
need support. So you have, like whatever. There's some companies that would offer. I remember when I left corporate, it was like, at that time, there were a couple
You
companies that were
spar or
offering
something.
like,
Something.
emergency childcare or
Oh,
some like stuff
yeah.
like that, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, holy shit. And I always used to talk about this too. Like, even I thought about it a lot while I was working, because when you were talking about women leaving the workforce and not being able to return,
Right.
childcare is literally like taken out of the P&L on the side of the your profit and loss accounting for that is coming out of you're pushing it out, you're comparing it against the woman's salary every single time.
Oh,
Every
yeah.
single time. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like that's part of like the mother load, right? Like that mental load and that load of responsibility that really does only fall on our side. Like if we have to justify that childcare. The father or your partner or whatever it might be is just going to go to work, and they're going to come home, and hopefully you have a supportive spouse, which is a totally or partner, totally separate conversation, because we
Mm-hmm.
need all the support we need. But then, yeah, like what else? What else? We come to this space where it's like, yay, I can do it all, but I don't have actually the systems in place to make it work so
Mm-hmm.
that I am not drowning, so that my mental state doesn't deteriorate, and and physical health too, because obviously stress is a freaking killer. Like,
It
your
literally is a
stress is
killer.
going
Yeah.
to
Mm-hmm.
affect your physical and medical health, and it's a problem. I mean, this is part of why I do what I do, because it's not about and I always try to make this so clear, like, I like to focus on the struggles and the solutions, because it's like, this isn't like a cure all. It's not like, okay, we're going to fix you by making sure that you can prioritize your wellness and your self-care. You have a plan for it, and now you're good to go.
Right.
It's like more about self-preservation, so that you can, in those moments where like there is literally too much, you have a space where you can like, you have a practice that you can come to, where you can nurture yourself. You can be there for yourself,
Right.
because not everybody is, at this point, nobody's coming to your rescue, kind of thing. And that's kind of a solid point in itself. I mean, we're not asking for that, but, it's kind of two different things. It's like, also, you have to ask for support sometimes, which is what we're trying to do here. We need to vocalize it. We need to have this conversation.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I hear like two main things in what you were just saying. And like, one of the things that makes me absolutely bonkers, like if I'm reviewing, say, a business's policy and procedures, or just something in terms of how they structure their healthcare plans, and their maybe a wellness plan that already exists within their system, and it has so many holes and gaps and things, or just even if we're not looking at like a wellness program,
Yeah.
a lot of times these policies and procedures, they're not even informed by research, science, data. It's just that, well, this is how we've always done it. So when you talk about support, it's like, yeah, go ahead, ladies, have at it. You want your children, you want your bank account, you want this and that, have at it. But you need to figure that out on your time. Like, there's no, like, let's come to the table and review the facts, folks.
Yeah.
People actually are more productive when they feel that they're valued, when they feel that their system supports their whole being, when actually they're more productive with less hours, less time. Like, if you look at businesses all around the world who maybe have a 4-day work week, or just their hours are structured differently. When I think about all of the businesses now who are like, well, we want you back in the office, and we want you working 8 to 6 or whatever it is, people are actually more productive with less time. Like this whole notion of, and it's all fear-based, right? Like we need to keep tabs on what you're doing because we don't trust that you're going to get the job done. And I'm like, is there really evidence? I mean, I'm sure there's some evidence to show that people sort of slack off or something, but for the most part, there's no evidence to show that people are going to just disregard their responsibilities. You know what I mean? If anything, you're showing them this is a good faith effort. We trust you to get your work. I mean, it's just a very different philosophy. And I just wish that all of these practices were informed with facts, data, research, and they're not. And that makes me absolutely nuts, you know?
Yeah.
So I hear that and what you're saying about like coming to the table and having this conversation, you know, setting up a forum where people feel like they can have a dialogue with their employers and just make sure that it's sort of satisfying both needs. I mean, why can't all sides be happy and abundant and productive, you know, like
Right.
it's very possible.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, it's fear-based. And so, you know, the fear being that is not possible, that it's black and white, you know,
Right.
and I feel like, especially in the conversations that I have on this show, I feel like I always come back to that space of like, it's the gray area. Like we need to be able to be okay in the gray area. Like it's not, oh, you know, the office isn't filled with, you know, working people. So therefore the numbers are going to drop and we're going to be out of business. Like that it doesn't have to be that. There is an in between.
Right.
So there's that element. And you mentioned too about, you know, employees, you know, if you're a working mom and you need more flexibility, you know, for the kids and stuff or whatever, or, you know, given the situation, you cannot come back to the office, like say, you know, and it's not, you know, again, this is not just a conversation about motherhood, but you know, when you add the element of how the hell do I account for childcare when my employer is asking me to come back into the office? And now it's been in, you know, it's like, it's also, okay, so maybe you had childcare, like you had that set up before already and you were going to the office before COVID or whatever. But you know what? A whole year has passed and things are very different as far as the availability of childcare and all of that. So things are different now. And I always think about this. It's like how talk about fear, like, you know, you're going to be fearful of even having that conversation with, like, even asking for that support that you need because you feel like you're on a chopping block now, you
Right.
know, and like the next time that there's a layoff, like you might very well be on the chopping block just because you asked for the support and the flexibility that you need. So it's really a major problem. It's like, it's insidious, really. It's an issue.
It is. It is.
Um,
Yeah, I think insidious is the perfect word because it sort of is woven throughout the fabric of so much of our culture. I mean, why should the onus be on the employee to have to step up and say, "Oh, I'm going to need this," because he or she is one of probably most of the people on the floor, the department, the office, the building, whatever. Like to me, I think if I am in charge, whether it's HR or whomever, you would do some sort of needs assessment. Like, okay, people, where are we at? You know, like what do we need to do? How does our company adjust to meet the needs to, you know, help our employees do the best job they can by us? You know, so as opposed to like, let's pretend this isn't happening and then make people sort of like grovel for some basic rights. You know, I mean, that seems just, I don't know, unconscionable to me. Like there should be some other system in place that, again, gets everybody talking about, okay, things have changed. What do we need to do?
yeah.
But there isn't always.
Crazy. And then if you're on the, like, you know, we're talking a lot about like, you know, balance with being a working parent or whatever it is. But like you have the other side of it too, where like if you're a stay-at-home parent and you're not going to the office every day, honestly, it doesn't, because I've lived both sides of it. So I know. And it's like, it doesn't matter because then your job is maintaining a house and taking care of your kids all day. Because if you're going to work all day and you're actually in the office, somebody else is doing that for you and that's their job. So if you're home, then that's your job. And it just happens to be, you know, at times more nerve-wracking because they're your own kids and they're going to drive you that much more crazy because they're your own children. And when you're, as every parent listening to this will know what I'm talking about, where it's like they're much different with you than they are with the babysitter or with their teacher or whatever it is.
Yes.
So so it's rough. It's rough on that end too. So it's like, how do you maintain your health and your wellness when you are sort of inundated with all of that? And now, not only that, going back to the expectations, right? Expectations for a stay-at-home parent are that your house is freaking immaculate because you're home all day. I remember I got that so much, like in the beginning of my motherhood journey, where it's just like, so what do you do all day? Or like, yeah, like, like
Yeah,
certain
I'm
judgy
sorry, you
people
don't
in
have
my
to call
life.
people out. I was just
Yeah.
thinking, "Boy, that's really mean." You
Of
know?
course it is. Of course it is. But there's going to be, there will be those voices of judgment that are going to stick around in your life. And they're going to, whether it's just perceived that way because of the expectations that we're all trying to live up against
Yeah,
or trying to live up to,
right.
or, active judging of like what is going, like, so okay, so now it's expected that you take care of everything. You take care of everything. You're the chauffeur, you're the chef, you're the maid, you're the, laundry lady. You're all, which I'm going like this because my laundry is right in front of me. Um, because it's my job. But so yeah, so I just kind of steer the direction to that, just hitting on like anybody who might be listening in like their own personal lifestyle. It's like, you have it, as the same way we were having conversations about having a discussion about your needs with your employer. I think it's an important form of self-care to be comfortable to have a discussion with your family members, your relatives, the people who can support you in your life, about the support that you need to maintain yourself while taking care of your responsibilities. It's the same thing. So it's like, I like to just make that connection of like, just because if you're listening and you're a stay-at-home mom and you feel like you don't really deserve to ask for that support because you don't go to work every day,
Mhm.
it's the same exact discussion. There's no difference
Wait,
asking for the support that you need.
I would argue with you that it's actually a harder conversation.
Yeah.
It's a way harder conversation because the person you are connected with, whether it's your spouse, your partner, um, you're with them for better, for worse. You guys know how to push each other's buttons, your trigger points, all that stuff. Like it's so interwoven with who we are, like the person that we choose to be with, right? And if you entered into that relationship prior to all of this disaster, you maybe entered into it with certain expectations. And so just like a contract, just like a business, you need to revisit that because now the landscape has changed, right? And I think that there's a lot of resistance on both sides for different reasons. And it's just harder to have those conversations with someone. It's like, think about family, right? Like having to go up against family troubles, or family dynamic issues. Like that is way harder than
Yeah. It's hard to have
colleagues
an
and
awkward
superiors.
conversation. Yeah.
Oh, so much harder. Yeah. So definitely, you were mentioning before about, sort of like what people do internally to deal with these issues. And you can't always look to someone else to save you. So I feel like it's part of it, right? Like you have the conversation, you do the best you can to either delegate or just restructure things in your house. But ultimately, it's like, what are you doing for yourself? How are you regulating your own stuff? And that's a big part of what I do is try to help people, use certain skills, exercises, practices to just come back to home base. And just having more compassion for the situation you're in and coming to some acceptance of that, that's enough for a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like most people want to jump right over that stuff and go right to well, how do I fix it? How do I change it? And I'm like, maybe we don't do that. Maybe we just come to the realization that like, this is the best you can do. And damn it, that's okay. Like, it's okay.
Right. Exactly. I think that it leads us straight back to that sort of like patriarchal society we're living in, where we feel like everything needs to be fixed and perfect and constant action and
Yes.
delivering and doing more.
Right.
And a lot of times the answer is just slow the fuck down. Slow your roll and eliminate things from your to-do. Like,
Mhm.
and that comes, it comes obviously to the other form of self-care for moms specifically that I'm constantly promoting is setting boundaries and saying no.
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
keep, because, as women, we really are heavily programmed to say yes to everything
Yeah.
because we're supposed to be the caregivers, we're supposed to be the nurturers, we're supposed to be the supporters. So
Mhm.
that's part of why it's so hard for us to ask for the support that we need and even further decline offering the support or, decline giving more when we just don't friggin' have it in us. We say yes to fucking everything. I mean, and you when you add in, by the way, based on my own personal experience, when you add in some of this, what you were saying before about, effects of childhood trauma that so many of us are already struggling with on some level somewhere, right?
Mhm. Oh, for
So
sure.
I'll be, completely honest about my experience. From childhood stuff, I really do struggle a lot with like feeling enough, like feeling like I am offering enough, doing enough, like I am enough, like my validity as a person really very much depends unless I, tame that voice, it will depend on my productivity and
Right.
my offering to people and to the
Yes.
world, right?
Right.
And, yeah, your level of success, whatever that means to you, right?
Yep.
So, we can go down the line of why that's there. But when you add to that already existing thing that somebody might have something like that or other, and you add this level of not feeling like you can have these discussions and ask for the support that you need. So just normalizing the fact that like we're not all just dealing with just this. There's
Right.
so much
Right.
more.
Always.
So it's like
Always.
healthy communication really it does come back to like having that comfortable the comfortable conversation is a stretch because it won't be comfortable. But feeling like you can at least speak your truth is it's a huge step. And even, I talk about this all the time where it's like, do we have supportive partners? Like, to be frank, I have a lot of friends who really don't. I am really lucky. I have a supportive partner, but even in that, even in my marriage that I feel like one of our biggest attributes is the fact that we support each other and that we just really, it's like optimal each other's happiness and comfort and wellness. But even with that, the conversations that I had to have at certain points were still awkward. It was
Mhm.
still from within me
Right.
hard
Coming from you.
to
Right.
speak
Mhm.
it. So, just sort of normalizing that for anybody who might listen to this and be like, "Oh, fuck." Like that's
Yeah, I
that's
mean, I
me.
think too, like before you can have the conversation, I mean, you could certainly have it at any given time, but I think that's why I love doing the work with people, with who have the background with trauma because it opens up the opportunity to really work on taking care of yourself. Because if you can get comfortable in your own skin, and Lord knows it took me so long to get to that point, even with a lot of work, like it was like 2 steps forward, 10 steps back. Like it was never easy. But it's so well worth the effort because then when you are comfortable, you know that whatever the outcome is, talk about expectations and producing something like whatever the outcome is going to be, I'm going to be okay. That doesn't mean I'm going to like the results or I'm going to like the reaction. But see, that's part of the issue, right? Is that we have, okay, if I talk to this person, I'm going to get what I want, or I'm going to get them to get it. I'm going to get them to see my position. And if that's your goal, you are setting yourself up for suffering
Right.
because you have no control. I don't care how well you craft that conversation. You can play it over in your head and write it out even. I know people who do that before they're so uncomfortable that they will write it out and practice it like a speech. doesn't matter. You don't know how it's going to land in someone. And so what? Then you're going to you're going to hang your hat on that, somebody else's reaction. You could be devastated. So coming back to just learning how to regulate that nervous system, and take good care of yourself, because whatever reaction they have, you need to know that you can handle it.
Yeah. 100%. And it's a really good point too, that as much as we are talking a lot about being able, whether it's, for your work-life balance or whether it's within your household, whatever, being able to ask for support when you need it, we also have to note that, like, if your partner or whoever your quote support system is supposed to be cannot give you what you need, you can give it to yourself. You know what I mean? Like and that we can't, like you said, we can't hang our hat on somebody being receptive and being, really, open to that. We have to really know that, like, and I don't even mean like, oh, well, go find your own, childcare, or go find your own, or be your own cleaning woman, or whatever it is. Like, that's not really what I mean. What I mean is, like, if you getting in touch with exactly what you said, like getting in touch with being able to nurture and self-soothe and having your self-care practices in order so that you don't actually need anything else. You can even when you're having like the complete meltdown, right? And or not even just, a meltdown, even if it's the month from hell, say, for example, right? And it's one thing after another, just to keep in those situations, you're not going to be thriving, and that's okay.
That's okay.
Just to keep your head above the water, you need your own self-care, self-soothing, regulating systems in place. And just keeping your head above the water in those shitstorm periods of time is okay. Like,
it's a win.
Okay.
It's a win.
Exactly.
It's good stuff. Yeah.
It doesn't need to be,
give ourselves enough credit.
Yeah. And like we said, there's not that 50-50 balance we're shooting for, where it's like this level of perfection. Throw it out the freaking window. We're integrating now.
Yes.
Like, seriously, it's so crazy. So, I think the only thing, I mean, we kind of touched on, I think the only thing that I meant to note at some point in this conversation is just how intense, like, the mother load is, and I don't know if anybody has heard that phrase before, but it's essentially like the mental load of being a mom and having not only the responsibility. Now, again, in your household might, what one person's household might look very different from another's. You could have a household where, your partner is not there. First of all, you could be, a completely single parent and you don't have any support system within your household at all. Or you could have a partner like I do, like I'm fortunate to have, that will pick up the slack wherever he can, and even, be a true partner, right? Where we're dividing and conquering over here. But I just like to acknowledge that all those different situations do exist. And it doesn't really matter, because if you're a mother, you're like, it's still all of the thought that goes into everything is just this weight, this extra space that's being taken up in your mental space of all of the things that need to be remembered. I mean, now this is like a silly example, but I'll give it just because I know somebody somewhere is gonna get it. But the other day, my husband, and I love him, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining because he was helping, but he sent my 6-year-old my almost 6-year-old daughter out the door to school wearing my 2-year-old's jacket. Now, it's a silly example.
Was that Chris Farley movie, right?
Right. So it's like
too small.
Manageable. It's a manageable example, but it's an example of where we're, in most cases, the ones that need to remember all of the details and make sure that things go just so. Now again, it's like I said, a silly example where we can throw that out the window. Did I get upset? Yeah, I totally got upset in the moment, completely. But what would have been the worst thing that happened if the girl went to school with a jacket that that wasn't her jacket? But there are much larger issues that could arise if, you know, there's not that one person who's on top of all these situations. And so I just like to note the fact that once again, we're in this space where we have like this extra responsibility to the household and to your family. And on the other end of it, your mental wellness might be suffering. And so if you're listening to this and you are like wondering, like, what's wrong with me? You know, like that's where I have an issue with it, is like I feel like there just are a lot of moms that are like, why can't I do this? And still in that space. And it's like, no, 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 no. It's that much. Like it literally is that much. And I think self-awareness, just becoming aware and acknowledging that, is where we need to start, of like this, you know, throw the balance out the window, acknowledge the fact that all of it's too much. We don't have to stay bitter and angry and resentful about it, because that's really not productive. But what we do
No.
need to do is become aware of it so that we can do something about it.
See, and I would say I love that that's a great place to start, because that's self-awareness and helps you get to that place of acceptance, right? But I encourage people to take a step back, because a lot of times, yes, of course, our circumstances can just start to really hit that mother load without a doubt. But I also find that a lot of suffering is we create it.
Yeah.
And so I encourage people to take a step back and let's figure out, what are your beliefs? Like, maybe you don't need to be the person who does it all. Or maybe, like you said, you felt like edgy about the whole jacket thing for a moment, but then you got over it because it's not the worst thing in the world, right? But I think for a lot of people, because they're either not letting go of who they were before COVID, we'll just use that as an example. You know, you and I have talked about that before too. Like, we might have felt like productivity or being productive looked a certain way, right? And then like post COVID, we had to scrap that, and we're like, okay, I can only get this much done with my bandwidth, right? But I think also for a lot of people, they have this tendency to need to control their environment. You know, if you're struggling with anxiety and you believe that you really believe that you are the only person who can do X, Y, and Z, and I'm trying to encourage somebody to like cut some stuff off their plate, and they're like, no, 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 I have to do this. I have to do this. I'm like, no, 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 no. You're making a choice to do that. Let's figure out why. And sure enough, there's some sort of pain, some sort of feeling of inadequacy, something that drives them to keep creating a situation that is really just adding to their suffering. So the self-awareness, and then let's figure out if there's any healing that needs to be done, and then take care of that so we can move forward. You know,
I love that. It's so true. Because it's always, so yeah, you become aware of a pattern, or really like a pattern that is recurring for you, and move backwards, because there's always a freaking root. There's always a reason.
Root. I love it.
I mean, there's always something. I'll just give a quick example, because I just experienced this sort of realization on my end, where there was a lot of irritability between me and my husband, because he has some health issues. And on my end, especially being, you know, in the wellness space for a few years now, where I'm trying really hard to learn about all these different, you know, modalities of wellness, and these different, you know, ways of altering your lifestyle and your diet, intuitive eating, things like that. And I'm so like, you know, I want to impart all this knowledge onto him, but, you know, can I come off maybe a little pushy sometimes? Probably. But we had, you know, so we were having conflict because of that. And it was, you know, because it was being perceived as nagging on his end, and that's okay, because that, you know, I get that too. And what it came down to, once I really sat with it and discussed with my therapist all of the things, was that I really, and this goes back to, you know, what I was talking about from childhood, right? I equate me taking care, and like a job of mine would be, right, to take care of my husband. And if I don't, then I'm a bad wife. So like, this is, you know, like this is a belief that's in my head. And so like that pattern of me continually coming at him with suggestions and nudges and potential judgment sometimes that I couldn't for some reason release for so long. Just couldn't stop having these moments in this pattern. And it was because it was fulfilling a purpose for me. And that purpose was it 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 validates me. I'm
Mhm.
enough if I'm a good wife and I stay on top of him, and if I try hard enough, and then I can like save him, I could fix him, I could help him because I'm
Right,
supposed to do that, because good wives are supposed to do that, supposed to take care
right.
of their husbands. And so
Mhm.
I'm validating myself by doing it. Meanwhile, he's on his own journey. Like you
Right,
said, like we've talked about before. I have little you we have very little control over what people. Doesn't even matter if they're your spouse. It doesn't
right,
even matter if they're your best friend, your husband, um your parent, your sister. It doesn't matter how close that person is to you. We have so little control over what they do.
right. People have free
You
will.
can lovingly, right? Like you can
Mhm.
lovingly impart some nudges, right? But that's about it. And but anyway, so it's just an example of how something was there's always a reason or a purpose that this pattern is fulfilling for
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Perhaps slightly off topic, but that's okay.
No, I don't think it's off topic because I think that it comes back to having compassion for yourself too.
Right.
Like you have the self-awareness, you utilize the opportunity to have the space or utilize the space in that therapeutic relationship to figure out what was really driving the pattern, right? The behavior. I mean, I think a lot of people beat themselves up like, what is wrong with me? Why am I doing this? Like, I should know better. My mother did this. I said I would never be like my mother. And I'm like, there's a reason for every damn behavior we do.
Mhm.
There are no accidents, no coincidences. If you're seeing it, it's popping up over and over again. And so if you have the awareness and the ability to cut yourself some slack to go, all right, wait a minute, let me take a look at this. You discover something really important.
Mm.
So I think that that's a great way to just come back to that compassion for yourself. Don't beat yourself up. There's a reason for the behavior. And then once you understand the reason, and you're able to sort of like recognize the warning signals that your body's just about had enough, then
Right.
you carve out that space for yourself. That's where the mindfulness piece is so helpful, because you have that space then that goes like, well, I could do this. I could continue to nag, to use your example, or I could continue to scroll through social media, or I could do this. Like either's okay. One's just a different side of the same coin. What decision do you want to make, to take
Right.
good care of yourself?
Like I keep saying lately, it's like choose you.
I like that. That's
You
a
know what
great
I mean?
t-shirt.
Like in other words, if you're sitting there like you were saying thinking, "What is wrong with me? Like why do I keep coming back to this? Why can't I
Yeah,
let this go?"
right.
Speak to yourself the way that you would speak to a best friend. Choose you. Be there for yourself. There are times where I literally will have to put my hands on my chest or on my heart and take a few deep breaths, and I will literally out loud tell myself like, I love you, I support you, I'm here for you,
I'm here.
because we
For that.
do, like, we beat ourselves bloody. Like it's awful.
It
But
is.
and it's like something that so many people, experience, but it's just important to note that compassion. Exactly. That is the connection between what I was saying and what we're, the topic that we're trying to stay on here. But anyway, this we hit a lot of things. We talked about a lot of stuff. I knew it. I knew we
We
would
could
be
go
like ding
all
ding
damn
ding
day
ding.
long, right? My kids
So
know if
funny.
I'm like this, if I got the hand over the forehead and the chest, mom needs a break. I'm like, I need a minute. I need a minute. I gotta
Right.
get
It's like the automatic, that's when right?
right. I need
I was
comfort.
just doing an interview with a EFT practitioner for tapping, and
Okay.
that's what she was saying too. She was just like, I'll literally just like go like I just start. Right, exactly. And and it like it doesn't matter what's going on, and that's when I know, oh, like I've started already. I need to like remove myself. But yes, this is exactly what we're talking about, having these systems in place so that you're not beating yourself up like, "Oh, why can't I get this right?" It's
Mhm.
literally we're swimming in too much right now.
Too much. Yeah.
And I don't want to say we're drowning because it's not helpful to, use that kind of language and it's kind of, like it's a little bit, it's not
Sounds
necessarily
hopeless. I like
right.
swimming. We're swimming.
Right. We're swimming in a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to have your self-care your self-care practices and your emotional regulation techniques, your nervous system, regulations techniques, all of these things. And you don't have to do it alone. There are coaches, there are practitioners, there are healers, there are therapists, there are people who are here to support. And I keep coming back to that. Like for every episode, it's like that's the point.
Right. You
You
don't need
don't
to
have
do
to
it
do this
alone.
alone.
There's YouTube, for Christ's sakes. Like, how many
Yeah,
times I'm like, I don't know how to do something. Let me go to YouTube,
exactly.
whether
It's
it's like
true.
fixing
Literally
something or
everything.
seriously.
Everything. Okay, this has been so amazing. Thank you so much again. I'm just so happy I got to see your face and have a good old conversation with you every time.
Same.
It's so inspiring and uplifting to talk with you. I love it. And so I just want to mention real quick, and I'll probably tag this on the podcast, but I just want to mention real quick that I just announced a workshop, a self-care for moms workshop that's going to start on May 20th. It's going to be a
Nice.
3-day event where we have
Ooh.
3 different Zoom sessions, 2 learning sessions, and then 1 group coaching where you'll be able to ask
Love
me
it.
everything and we dig into like all that we've reviewed. You're going to get a workbook. You're going to get journal prompts. We have a Facebook group. So this is a
Love it.
program that I just announced because I'm all about the mamas this month. And
Mamas.
as you know, Lisa, like my heart and soul is in just helping moms to feel good about prioritizing themselves amidst all of the stuff we're swimming in as we're talking about, which is why it's so important to discuss it and vocalize these things.
Yeah.
So that's what I got going on. If you want to go to alignedheart.net, if you're listening to this and you're curious, go ahead over to my site and you'll see it in the events section. Lisa, do you have anything that you want to tell us about that you got going on, or where can we find you?
Well, if you will allow me to get back to you on that one, simply because I do have an 8-week mindfulness course coming up. But there's a few different things in terms of what's going to happen for the summer. Like, do I want to take a vacation and start the course after that? There's a day retreat at Sandy Hook coming up that I'm really excited for because, retreats used to look very differently, but I'm like, I think we can make it work, this way, just sort of meeting up on the beach. So there's a few things going on, but I don't want to throw anything out there just yet. And then with regard to the website, that's also changing. In fact, on Monday, I have to meet with the marketing team and, sort of finalize some things. So if you'll allow me to get back to you on that.
Oh yeah. We'll
Thank you.
update all the info when it's ready. But like I'm so excited for you. Like this is just awesome. This is it. Like you're growing and change is
You
good.
too, lady. You too. Remember where we were with our yoga class? Like, like with all the
what are we
things that
doing
were
here?
happening. I know.
That's because the life of an entrepreneur is it's
It's
crazy.
rocky.
Like
It is.
insane. I
Yeah.
feel like you were saying before, where it's like a healing journey all over again. Like you got to do all the healing on the back end stuff the shit you already got going on. And then when you decide to be an entrepreneur, you're like, oh wait, here's all this
Yeah.
other stuff that I have to address too.
Right. It's
A few steps
not for
forward, a
everybody.
few steps back.
For sure. No,
Crazy.
You're doing great work. I love it. And, I was actually thinking to myself when you brought up, sort of where you were and how you think maybe you were sort of like nudged out of your position once you were pregnant. Like that always makes me a little angry when I think about that. Just not just, for you, of course, but just in general. But look at like the good that's come out of that experience, right? Like you said, had you stayed like that, it probably wouldn't have been good because it's not.
I would have been gone. I would have been gone anyway because, like I said, I mean, I can say that I don't say that with certainty, obviously, but I'm pretty sure that the system that I was up against in corporate America would not have been conducive to the life that I wanted for my family.
Right.
And so, and it, just leads right back to what we were talking about, how there's so much that needs to be addressed. And hey, maybe we can be a part of it. I'm down. Let's do it. Let's
do
take
it.
on the patriarchy. Let's do it.
Who's with us? We need more rebels to start,
Literally, we need a whole bunch,
really.
seriously. but it's all good. Even just having this conversation is going to be helpful, which we'll share all over the place at minimum, right?
Yes.
Very good. All
So
right.
much,
I
Samantha. To see you.
adore you. I hope I get to
My
see you in person soon. Thank you so, so much. I'm going to get all
pleasure.
the
My
details
pleasure.
in the notes when you have everything set, and hopefully we get to see you again.
Yay. My pleasure. I would love to. Thank you so much. See you
Yay.
soon. Take
Thank
care.
you. I'm going to
Bye.
just end our broadcast